Hey guys, Asian Kyle here, bringing you confessions of an appendix carrier, and I've got a major confession to make. I appendix carry, and I really, really like it. We're just gonna go over really fast my confessions. If that's all you really want to stick around for, I guess that's all right. But I do encourage you to stick around for the rest of the video, so you can kind of see my talking points and understand where I'm coming from with what I'm about to say. So, my first confession is car carry slash seated carry is incredibly comfortable. I can't even begin to tell you how comfortable it is, actually. I know what a lot of you are thinking, that sitting down with a gun is not very comfortable whenever you're appendix carrying, because if you're a dude, this thing's going to point to your junk and it's just very uncomfortable. Well, that's not true. And I know I can already hear some of you in the background saying, well, dude, that's because you carry a little Pansy 43. No, that's not even necessarily true even then. If you've got a decent holster, it's going to be very comfortable to carry. This thing, with the holster being as long as it is and the gun just being as long as it is inherently very small, obviously because it's a single stack 9. But depending on how you carry and where your holster sits on your body, it's not going to be uncomfortable at all. Even before I got rid of my 19, I was concealed carrying appendix style with a canted holster, mind you. So essentially it would sit on my body instead of being straight like this. It was at a cant. So kind of uncomfortable just because it was in a really funky way. But even then, incredibly comfortable, and it sits in a nice little flat pocket before it hits your lower abdomen. So sitting down slash car carry, incredibly comfortable. We'll talk about that a little bit more here as the video goes on. Second on this is how easy it is to conceal. I'm only about 6'1", 165 pounds. My hands are only medium with large-sized fingers, so I'm not a very big dude. And concealing this little guy is incredibly easy. And I know it's a Glock 43. But even then, I'm not a very big guy. I print almost no matter what I'm doing because I'm so thin. So carrying appendix makes this a breeze. I don't even know it's on me. It's just, it disappears on my person and nobody knows it's there, including some of my other friends who didn't know I conceal carry, and they conceal carry. So my third confession is draw speed. Now this is more subjective. You can't really measure how fast draw speed is unless you're a professional shooter. I'm not a professional shooter. But to me, I feel like I draw more consistently. I draw a little faster, and just more than anything, I feel more comfortable with it. Therefore, making this one of the reasons in confessions of why I like appendix carry is it's very comfortable to draw. Those are 3 really good confessions. Now let me talk about just a few bad ones as well. Whenever it comes to bending over, there's really no great way to do it. You can either if you're carrying behind the hip, do the awkward, I'm going to hold on to my shirt with this hand because my gun's back there, and bend over and awkwardly hold on to my shirt still, and definitely print around this area of my firearm kind of grab. Or you can bend over and have this little portion right here kind of hit into your abdomen, and it's not all that uncomfortable. It's still way better than carrying behind the hips. So there's just one small confession as far as what I don't like. It's just uncomfortable. It's whatever. If you had a gun with a longer beaver tail, it might be worse. But even then, appendix carrying is a lot easier to do. Another just small little minor thing when it comes to appendix carrying is actually the safety of it. And I know what a lot of people, why they don't appendix carry is because they're pointing the muzzle towards something they don't wish to destroy. That's just a training issue. You need to get over that. And we'll talk about safety more later on in the video, but as long as you have good trigger finger discipline, and you are watching as you reholster your firearm, that there's no obstructions in the way, appendix carrying is incredibly, incredibly safe. It's concealable. It's really awesome. So if you want to go ahead and ditch out now, great. Give the video a thumbs up and share. If you want to stick around and continue to hear why I've said what I've said so far, that's awesome. So let's assume here really fast that nobody knows what appendix carry is, or you're sharing this video to someone who's new to carrying and they're like me and they're very thin and they just can't carry their gun. Other than recommending get a smaller gun and sell the one they just spot, appendix carry is a great option. To me, and the way I define appendix carry is anything carrying from about the 11 o'clock to the 1 o'clock. So just in the very front portion of your body. Some people go as far as 10 to 2, and I don't really consider that part of appendix carry 110% when it comes to your firearm, just because now we're moving towards the sides of your body, and that's when we start getting a strong side carry. So appendix carry is in the front of your body. If you look down, you don't have to move your head, move your eyes or anything, and you can see your firearm because it's in the very front portion of your body. So appendix carry in a nutshell and what it is. How I prefer to carry is actually in this one-piece holster. This is a holster made by a fellow named CA Holsters. I found him on Instagram at CA Holsters. I'll also go ahead and put a link down in the description to his website below, but this is a one-piece style holster, and I know it's two pieces of Kydex, but it's one piece because it carries everything all in one inclusively. So I carry like this because it's comfortable. I also carry like this because I have a second mag there with me at all times. There's just no excuse to not have a second mag if you're carrying a semi-auto firearm. 90% of failures can be cleared with the second magazine. As we see here, it's also unloaded. So it's a really fantastic holster. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, mostly because this is going to be a review for a different time, but this is just how I carry. We're going to go ahead and roll in a little segment in the video here where I show you how I put my holster on, as well as the different places on the front of your body in which you can carry appendix style. Alright, so I'm going to show you how I put my holster on. For the purpose of this demonstration, my gun is clear. There's nothing in the magazine, nothing in the chamber. First and foremost, what I do is I load up, I put one in the chamber. That's a very personal decision. If you feel comfortable doing it, I really advise that you do it. If not, make sure you remember that you're not rocking hot with one in the chamber. So I'll chamber one, I'll go and reload the mag, put the mag back in. Then from there, what I do is I go ahead and I actually holster my gun inside the holster without it being on my body first. And the main reason I do that is if you can lessen any sort of chance of maybe accidentally screwing up, getting your finger in the trigger guard, some other obstruction in the trigger guard, that would be awesome. Because notice how I'm holding my holster when I go to reholster it. My feet aren't below there, my legs aren't below there. The gun is actually angled away from my body. So you just want to make sure that you put your gun in your holster first and then put your holster on your person. So what I do from here is I go ahead and pull up my shirt. I always wear an undershirt of some sort. And with that, just as a helpful hint, if you've got any sort of hair on your abdomen and you only have like a mid-sweat guard like this, it gets kind of uncomfortable. If you're more of a man than I am and you can hold out while your slide pulls your hair on your belly, rock on, man. You're better than I am, but whatever. So I always tuck my shirt in, and then what I do is, because I'm wearing a nylon gun belt from 511 Tactical, just while I'm doing the video, I'll just put my tail in my pocket. I go ahead and get my holster lined up with my gun centered on my body where I like to carry. And I stick the muzzle in, and then I switch over from my right hand, hold it my left, and from here I work my claw in first. The holster's not all the way in, obviously, because one clip is still up here, and this one isn't even fully attached yet. So then what I do is I just grab my pants right here, and with my thumb, just push on, and then I make sure that my belt loops aren't obstructing my holster from sitting on my belt all the way, and then I'll just go ahead and check underneath here to make sure my gun is actually secured. The thing you don't want to do is think your gun is on there, but it's actually not, and then go to draw. You're not going to get your gun out very easily. So just go and make sure that your gun's always secure. And then from here, I'll go and finish my belt. Just a helpful hint about this, your belt doesn't have to be as tight as you would if you're carrying behind the hip, mostly because on your hip back here, your leg's always moving, and it's a pivot point essentially. So you got a leg moving, it's moving your heavy gun, it's always working, and it pulls your pants down, so you have to really crank on your belt and squeeze the life out of your waist, if you will. But in appendix carry, my belt's actually not all that tight. If I were to actually take my gun out and jump, my pants would start to fall. But this is very comfortable for me this way. Kind of why we've got the gun exposed. I carry my gun center line of my body, so the exact 12 o'clock. You can move the gun more towards 1 o'clock if it's more comfortable, or if you're a lefty, more towards your 11. It's really up to you. Appendix carry is essentially anything forward of your hips. My hips being right here, forward of your hips. Just like that. When it comes to actually carrying, go ahead now and put your shirt over it. I'm wearing a medium-sized shirt, and it carries and conceals pretty well. I can already hear you on the side of your camera being like, whoa, man, I can totally tell that you're printing here and printing here. Well, you know what? You're looking. You know what to look for, and you're looking for an excuse just to, point something out. For the untrained eye, which is most people, carrying like this, they're not even going to see the corners at all, especially when you stand up completely straight. Notice how now, my shirt just falls a little bit right here, and I know if I didn't have my undershirt tucked in, it would conceal a lot better, but that's just how I like to carry. But fully standing up straight, it creates a natural pocket right here where your gun just likes to fall into. So slouching, yeah, you can kind of tell a little bit because your shirt starts to form a little bit more, but stand up straight, don't tighten your belt too much, just like that. One of the major concerns when it comes to appendix carrying is actually when it comes to your draw and your holster. Whenever I draw, I take my hand like this, grasp my gun, but notice how my finger is not even on my holster at all. And I draw, and my finger goes completely straight. It's not touching the frame, as we see. And I actually don't get my finger even onto the trigger until I'm on target, which is exactly how it should be. You have to have very good finger discipline and trigger finger discipline in order to conceal carry appendix style. Mostly because of all the important stuff that's beneath your waistline. If you shoot yourself in the leg and you hit one of your major arteries, chances are the ambulance is not going to get to you in time. It can be dangerous if you're careless. So be careful, be mindful, keep your trigger finger off the trigger. The next thing that's very important when it comes to appendix carry is actually reholstering. If you have, say, set obstruction and it is in the way of your trigger, I'm going to push with my left hand here. That's my thumb. And it didn't take hardly any force at all. And no, I was not pushing up with the Sharpie. I'm holding it in place so it doesn't fall on the ground. Just to kind of show you even further, I'm going to hold my Sharpie in place. I'm just going to push with my pointer finger. Left-handed, and I'm right-handed. That is not much pressure at all. You have to be very, very careful just to look before you go ahead and reholster like this. And all it takes is just a quick glance down, and when you get it to about right here, that's all you really got to do. Push it in the rest of the way. If you watch any of Range Time TNS with Corey and Erica, he does this really weird like circular sweep thing, and I don't really know what he's doing fully. I assume he's clearing out his garments, making sure there's no obstructions. I don't know what's up with the circular, just other than it looks really cool. But make sure that you've got all obstructions out of the way before you go ahead and reholster. So then reholster, just like that. When it comes to actually taking it off at the end of the day, it's basically the exact opposite. I'm going to roll up my shirt here, take my belt off, and then from here, now these aren't any sort of fancy clips or anything like the G-code clips, but essentially work the same. You just want to pull up on these, and there you go. The holster is completely off your person. Alright, so let's talk again about safety. I know I hit it up in that video a little bit, but modern firearms are incredibly inherently safe. I mean, there's just a lot of safety features built into them to, number one, make sure that there's not lawsuits out the wazoo against the firearm manufacturer, but just the way technology is. So we'll give a very brief overview, and I'll go ahead and put a link to the Glock website down below so where you can watch this in action. But in a nutshell, we're going to use my Sharpie as the firing pin. This is the firing pin all the way engaged, struck the primer. The way that Glocks work is the firearm essentially sits with your firing pin about right here, and there's a firing pin block right there. The firing pin will not go forward because there's something in the way. And what happens is when you pull the trigger, you end up releasing that mechanism, pushing the spring upwards, releasing where the firing pin is. And as you hit the resistance, actually what you're doing as you're clearing resistance, you're pulling the firing pin back the rest of the way. When it goes click, your firing pin slams forward, and therefore it makes the slide go back because you just released the energy of the bullet. And when it does that, it resets the firing pin behind the firing pin block. Therefore, again, the firing pin cannot move forward. That is Glock safety in a nutshell. The Glock video will do a lot better job, mostly because they have a fancy visual about it. But these guns are incredibly safe. And as you saw with the video insert earlier, as long as you don't have any obstructions inside your trigger guard, carrying appendix, the gun will never go off, especially with modern firearms. So if you're going to carry appendix, I really recommend that you go with some modern firearm, anything from the last, say, 20 years, with a firing pin block. That's all you got to look for. Glocks have them, Smith & Wesson has them, Springfield has them. They're incredibly safe. And the other thing with Glock as far as their safety goes is because of the fact that you aren't sitting on a single action style trigger, you're actually finishing the cocking method of the trigger itself, or of the firing pin. There's no chance for it to accidentally, slip and fall and strike that cartridge. You're having to pull the firing pin back the rest of the way in order for the gun to go off. So appendix carry is incredibly comfortable. As far as actually sitting with the gun goes, This is just a very mock and not a super great drawing, but it works all the same. As you see here with low car, this is say like your Ford Focus or whatever, something very small, sedan style. Right here, the bin, this represents your knees. The gun doesn't poke you down in your lower abdomen, lower groin too badly, actually. It sits very close to your body. Probably the most painful part about sitting in a low car and carrying is still this little beaver tail right here that's kind of prods up against you, but it's not too bad. In a truck or a car that sits up more or sits more upright with the seats, it's a lot more comfortable, mostly because you're not forcing your knees into your chest. Your thighs are more flat and parallel with the ground, therefore the gun doesn't push into you as badly. Probably the most comfortable way to appendix carry is actually seated in a chair style, and that's because your feet are on the ground. You're not having to kick them out in front of you at all. Your gun sits very upright, it doesn't prod into your stomach too terribly bad. And all of these are incredibly comfortable to conceal carry, appendix style. It's really not as bad as a lot of people would think. And no, for all you men out there, this gun, unless you have like a long slide version gun, is not going to poke you in your man parts. It's simply not. It just, the way biology is, your waist sits higher than your man parts do. So let's totally debunk that, get that out of your mind. Appendix carrying seated is incredibly comfortable. So now the all-important question. What should you do? This is a tough one because we don't all want to end up with a drawer full of holsters because we tried a bunch of different carry methods and they failed. We also want to be safe and comfortable when we carry. Let's get one thing straight. Carrying a firearm is never going to be like not carrying a firearm. It shouldn't ever be that way. If you carry off body and you feel like you don't ever have your firearm on you, it's probably because you're off body carrying wrong. It's not in your mind that you have a gun on you. With that said, appendix carry is probably the most comfortable way I found to carry. I don't like off-body carry. I didn't conceal very well behind the hip, and I'm not going to carry behind the small of my back because I have a bad back already. So appendix carry is incredibly comfortable to carry. Probably the biggest thing you need to ask yourself when it comes to appendix carry is, can you keep your trigger finger off the frickin' trigger? If you can do that, and as you saw when I went to reholster, my trigger finger isn't even touching the lower portion here, and once it's actually into my holster itself, my finger comes completely off the firearm. The amount of margin for error for something to get right in there, as long as I'm looking down and making sure I'm cleared, very, very, very small. So if you can keep your finger off the frickin' trigger, appendix carry is very, very safe. Also, you need to make sure whenever reholstering that you're clearing yourself of any obstructions. As you saw, it didn't take much pressure to make this thing go off. So can you keep your finger off the trigger? If you said yes to that question, appendix carry can probably work out really well for you. The other thing we need to consider is actually your body size. I know if you're probably a bigger person, appendix carry might not be so easy because you have a gut hanging there. That's not really my call to make. That's entirely up to you. But the good news is you can carry kind of as you saw here in the 12 o'clock with my gun, or you can carry more towards, your 1 o'clock, maybe way over here towards your 2 o'clock. Or if you're a lefty, your 12 o'clock, obviously your 11 o'clock, maybe way over here at your 10 o'clock. But you have an entire scope and area in which you can carry an appendix style to work around that, even if you are a bigger person. But you need to ask yourself is, will your body type work? Is your body type conducive to appendix carry? If you said yes to that question as well, maybe appendix carry is for you. Another thing in which you need to consider actually is your holster. These holsters aren't necessarily cheap. At the time I bought this, it was about $75. I know that there are a lot of holster companies out there that make this style. T-Rex Arms, Alpha Concealment, obviously CA holsters that is, sorry. But you don't want to spend a lot of money on a holster that's like this, especially if you don't think you're going to carry appendix and like it. I went on a limb and bought this holster as a one piece, but I do know that M3 Tactical Kydex makes one that has the mag caddy you can detach just in case. So that's another thing to consider is, are you willing to spend the money on the holster? Because even then, they're not cheap in order for you just to try something out. You have to make sure that you're going to enjoy it. So anyways, guys, those are my confessions on appendix carry. This is Agent Kyle signing out, and today I brought you the confessions of an appendix carrier.